everybody. Good afternoon. This is Nirali Shah and I'm live. How are you guys? And I'm back with episode 2 of this new generational perspective on the story of the great saga Ramayana. And I hope that you've already watched episode 1 and the intro session of why I'm doing this story and what is the purpose of creating the story once again and what angles I would be taking in. And today it's going to be a great focus on the learning years of Ram. So I'm going to be live, on screen in a minute. So just hold on, join in and let me know if you're already here watching me. And hey everybody, so good to see you. And I'm sure not everybody is joining me right away, but you will be watching this episode somewhere in the future, here on Facebook or on my YouTube channel Alchemy of Being, where I'm uploading all these episodes so that you can revisit it or you can look it up on the YouTube Alchemy of Being with Nirali Shah. And here we go. So in the last episode, we kind of stopped at the part of how Ravan gets his boon and how he becomes the Ajaya, meaning the one who cannot be destroyed by any demons, any kind of animals, any kind of deities and gods and goddesses. Cannot be defeated by any powerful being, except that he forgot to say that men and anybody, men and women, because he thought that they have no power over such powerful being as him. And on the other side, there is this great ruler Dashrath. We learned a little bit about his dynasty, how the sun god started the entire the clan. And in the clan, after many years of waiting, four sons are born, and the names are Ram, Bharat, Shatrughna and Lakshman. Lakshman is the youngest one, Ram is the eldest one. Ram was the son for Kaushalya, Bharat, Kaikeyi's, and Sumitra had two twins, which is Bharat and Shatrughna and Lakshman. Now, they were named very specifically. So before I enter into today's details of how they begin their childhood and the years of learning, Ra is one of the known letter in Sanskrit and also in Egyptian language. Ra means light or sun. So the one who is bright as sun, or who is the sun. So in Egyptian hierarchy of gods and goddesses, one of the most mighty gods is the sun god Ra. So Ra and Ma, the one who has become that light or who shines that light. So Rama. So there's a lot of coincidences with how the world history plays and how the characters have some similarities. The reason being, and since this is absolutely a new gen perspective, so I would like to talk about these concepts, and you would find evidences of this in many historic channels where they talk about um, you know Egyptian culture, and there's a lot to do with Rome and Greece, and we have this mentions somewhere connecting deeply. If we go into the core of each culture, there was just one culture once upon a time on the earth, and then as we evolved, we started separating, and that's where the religions came in, because we started following some or the other person who was a great being, some or the other divine being who with whom a particular group of people or a society resonate with, in order to evolve, in that person's guidance. But ultimately, the core wisdom was one. It was just the same. And as I talked about in the intro session, that how we evolved, and in that entire evolvement process from golden age to now, the earth went through many calamities and traumas, and in that somewhere, um, energetically, vibrationally, we devolved too. And in that process, one of the nature of devolving as as a mass is, the more there is a level of separation. And that's why, even in the core of every religion, there is a mention of oneness. There is a mention of, we all are one, the God is one. So somewhere the truth is very deeply hidden. It's just that, uh, we got to decipher it with a vaster, higher, uh, topmost perspective. So, well, I am hoping that with this storytelling, somewhere we are revisiting uh, those times where, as I've mentioned somewhere previously also, and I would like to mention it again and again, that we have lived that era. We have lived these years on the earth, experienced the upliftment, and we've also experienced the downfall of how we have moved as civilizations, as masses. And by recalling this time, this space, um, this version of the golden age, is to somewhere re liven the uh, the wisdom, the energy, the vibration, the frequency, by recalling it. It's like, when in a mass, we are opting or going for something, well, we manifest something really, really faster. And the more separation we have, and we can, in a group, all of us can feel stressed to get, like, really, really fast. The reason being, the more people in the group, or in a workplace, or in a school area, or in a house, more people are stressed, automatically the influence expands of, that stress, the anxiety. Even if the other person was feeling wonderful and happy moments ago, but the moment the person gets into the vibration of the group, automatically that changes. And when you're calling upon such energies, the idea is to expand these frequency, expand, remember, recall this idea, and then build upon it, today's time. So, well, it's a crazy little thought that I have, or crazy little intention that I have, but let's see where we go from there. So, well, so Ram means the one who has become the light, or the one who shines the light, and that's also how I'm going to encompass how a light comes on the earth with a purpose, and you know is also going to evolve, and learn the ways of the world as we move forward in today's session. But before that, I would also mention, the significance of, how the naming ceremonies used to actually take place in that time. So Ram was named Ram for the quality in the seeds that he was born with, the purpose that he had um, to incarnate on the earth. So he was named Ram. Bharat, in Sanskrit, which is a Sanskrit word basically, means the fire, the one for whom we make the sacrifice. And it's so significant how, Ram's purpose's journey also begins with, somewhere Bharat indirectly being involved. So obviously we kind of know it, but at all you don't know it, then we will discover it in the coming episodes. Also, Bharat means the one who takes care of all, who includes all. So his decisions are not just for himself. He was born the um, with the seed that he would see things in a much more vaster way, and his decision cannot be for selfish or greedy reasons. It has to be for the good of the masses. And also, uh, because the name carries such a quality and such a characteristic, uh, even our country, India, is called Bharat. For there is a level of inclusivity of different cultures and different religions, and the one who really takes care of the whole, but also is the epicenter of a certain inner fire, epicenter of a certain spiritual involvement, because it's the fire that burns the blockages and helps person to push themselves forward. So well, that Shatrugna means the one who is the destroyer of the enemies. So it could be the enemies inside and the enemies outside. And one of the biggest roles Shatrugna plays in the team of these four brothers is to kill a lot of demons. He was like, we have heard a lot of stories on how Ram is the one taking care of killing the demons, but Shatrugna had a biggest role to play in the entire teamwork. And I'm using the word teamwork again and again because somewhere I'm aware that these four brothers were born in this family to Bharat, to Dashrath, for a significant reason of bringing a level of happiness and expansion and prosperity to the Sun dynasty on in their kingdom, to their people, and to show people a different way, different path of living. In so many ways, and there's so many ways, that's why that specific time and the time when Ram actually rules the kingdom Ayodhya, um, was called the Ram Rajya, which is like the goldenest period of for any kingdom. So there were times where his stories of how Ram ruled, and how he ran his empire were written and spoken and taught to children, which is kind of now vanished, and we have an overall idea of how things were as in Ramayan, but those aspects are missed because this is like an age long, like very 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 old, some occurrence in the history. Now, Lakshman is the name that was given to him because he was a sign for prosperity and the one who brings good fortune. And in every sense, that was true for him. And how is something that we're going to unfold as we move forward in the story. So, in this period, the naming ceremony was, as I said, was done based on what is the seed in that person, in that being, and uh, accordingly they were named. So this is how the names took place. Now a little bit I'm going to talk about how these four brothers were connected. So as I already said that they had a purpose together, and this is how soul groups are formed. Their role is to incarnate together in a specific era, and they have their individual purpose. An entire story of Ram and each character of Ramayan have a each one has a very specific role to play, and a very specific purpose to play in the collective um, uh, reach to, or the collective conclusion of how the society gets directed. And I'm giving you an overview. We will look into the details as we move forward. So um, you know in typically, if you look at the Ramayan story, they say that there was a great love between the brothers, and they really respected Ram, and they followed everything the Ram said. And this is a time where elders are greatly respected and all that. Well, if you look at it in the present time, it feels really good to listen in the stories and know, yes, this is our culture. But if you see right now, we find it very difficult. Even if sometimes we want to respect a person, it doesn't come from the heart. So the difference between this and this is, there is not an enforced respect between these four brothers. There is no competition or enmity between these brothers. The reason being, uh, each of them were very sure of why they're born. So they had no uh, intention or reason to tap into, or overpower other person's role or responsibility on the earth. And this is something very very important, because even in the workplaces and school, despite knowing what my skills are and what my strengths are and what my weaknesses are, sometimes people want to take a certain role because it feels good. It is a great, it looks great to be on a certain status. But when it comes to a skill, it might be really, somebody else may fit to that role beautifully. And then there is always a competition between that specific chair or specific status, and going towards it, and the one who knows how to manipulate and please others gets the role or gets that status. Most of the time, this is a typical scenario. There are cases where actually people get according to what they actually deserve, so that is also possible. But typically this is a common scenario. But in here, nobody is overpowering each other. Everybody is very sure of who they are as a child also. Now that's the beauty of this era, that there is a lot of clarity of why I'm here, who am I. There is a sense of who am I as a person, my skills, my goodness, and why I respect the other person. So without having any logical explanation, there was a sense of honor and trust between these brothers. So without any um, force or value system enforced on them, that have to do this. It was a very natural um, respect and honor flowing from their heart towards each other. And so they knew when to actually listen to whose advice. So Ram knew when to actually go and ask Lakshman, or talk to Bharat about a certain aspect. So well, that was the beauty, and the younger ones also knew the same. So that is how the combinations of relations were existing in that time. Um, in all of that, now somewhere around the age of 7 to 25 is the time period that is considered an educational time, a training time for the young ones in that era, which is typical to ours too. But one thing which is different between our time and this time, and that is the lifespans in this era were really really big. So people could live for thousands. Like Ravan was really really old, like many thousand-year old, when Ram actually happened to meet him. So lifespans were really big even for a normal person. For Ravan, he had actually received a boon. He's manifested a long life, and he cannot be killed in any way by anybody. So obviously he was he was going to live for a long, long time. The bodies were built with great strength. The food, the environment, the air in that time, because there was, every, nature and human lived in connection with each other. They understood and respected each other too. So the harmony was not only, as I said, between the brothers and relations in a larger level, but also between the nature and men. And so, because men really respected nature, nature gave back a great body, because our bodies are basically made of five elements of nature. So everything that we breathe, we drink, we eat, it is all nourishing our body in some or the other way. It kind of rejuvenates our body on the daily basis. And because there was this respect on the continuous basis, the bodies were built stronger, and how, like, more divine. And there was a level of um, like there will hardly any diseases existing in that time. So people actually required reasons to, like, die. Like, if they were done with the work on the earth, if they were through living their goals, they had a very satisfactory life, then they would find a way, a means to leave the earth. And that would be their individual choice on how they're going to actually go. So there are many instances that we will meet, where how we will, like how Ravan planned his death, or how Dashrath also met his end. And this is not a time where dying is considered like the end, and life is done. Because, and that's where we are also entering into the education system, made people aware of the holistic sense of how we exist in the universe. So there is not only a connection with the nature, but also with the universe, that we, like, this is not the end. If a person leaves the body, definitely we miss the physical absence of that person, but that is not the end. So also, this is a time where there is a very um, the layers of attachment, and the layers of um, greediness, or there's more love and harmony in compared to attachment with each other. So the more there is a level of attachment with something, the more we feel separated from that thing, the more there is a level of expectation from a certain thing or person or people or situation, the more we feel hurt, the more we feel disappointed and rejected. you know the intensity of that attachment kind of gives us back the level of pain. And this is the time when that is less, and that's why the possibility of connecting with all of this was also more. Connecting with all of these means, with the universal energy, having this more of psychic abilities, more of superpowers, more of the more power to manifest, because in general there was a sense of more purity in the being. And purity means what? How do we define purity in a more understandable language? I would say that lesser soul's desire to fall less into the trap of suffering, uh, uh, so, more not wanting to accumulate a lot of past baggages. Like that the more you are operating from your past baggage, automatically the purity of your being kind of begins to dilute. And so this is a time where they were taught in school how to, actually let go, and not let go in the form of, yeah, I'm going to let go of things and I forget, and then deep down you still have those thoughts going in the back of your mind. It's actually um, having that strength and the courage to um, choose to, because there is lesser density of attachment, it's very easy to let go. So, like, if at all, and since we are already talking about it, I would really like to mention that, if we got a stronger glue, attachment is like that, like a strongest favicol ka mazboot zod. That is the attachment between two things. Now, two things need to create something. Like, example, if you're going to build chair, two things, require some level of connection, which could be a purpose, or which could be, work together. Now, until the purpose is, that there exists a purpose to be together, you're together. But favicol ka majboot zod is the attachment. So, between that, if you're applying that majboot zod of, favicol bond, then when two things are separated, they kind of, mess each other's world. And this is not in this time and space. So, well, that's the beauty of, how it was. So, um, well, from that, let me jump into, otherwise I'll continue to go into, this attachment and stuff, and we will talk about it when it is time. But with this much information, let's jump to, how was the school life? So between 7 to 25 years, the young children were sent to the Gurukul. And we've heard of the concept of Gurukul a lot through various stories from our scriptures, and as an Indian, it's very easy for us to understand that in that period, and even now, the boarding school is the concept coming from the Gurukul system. So they were sent away from the parents uh, to a different place to study under a wise, visionary, and very skilled teacher. And these gurukuls were greatly supported financially and through many other resources by the kingdom of, wherever that was. So by the, kings of that specific area. And different people, especially kings, and, like, the future kings and the princes were sent there, but also different, different aspects, or different occupy, like, different people from different areas of society also came and studied in this Gurukul. So it wasn't like, only the prince studied. Many times they were a mixture of students. The Gurukul supposed to be a very loving, nurturing, and a very uh, very secured environment. So, like, right now, if we say, we send our children to the boarding school and all that, well, somewhere they miss their parents, somewhere they feel that, nobody understands me, or I'm being bullied and all that. Well, this wasn't a time like that. So, if they were sent to Gurukul, they had a Guru Ma, the one who is, looking into the emotional education of the child by nurturing and loving and showing, great motherly love which a child requires in the growing years, and a very visionary teacher who would have the knowledge of every aspect of life, and would be able to see the seed within the child, what is his role in the future, what are the duties that this child will unfold, and, give to the society, to the people. And the training will have all those areas included in the holistic manner in this Gurukul. So the way of life is very natural and simple, but very comfortable and loving. So that's something that I can only, picture and give you an energy to, how it feels like to be in that environment. But it's a very, how at all you go to a very beautiful temple with such a peaceful vibration, how you feel, the level of peace you feel and the nurturance you feel, and just want to be there. That is the kind of an environment, because there used to be a lot of meditations and a lot of different, like, very high vibrational conversation and thoughts. I wouldn't use the word thoughts because it's not what thoughts, but rather intentions in that period. So, high vibrational intentions running in, the administrative group in the Gurukul. The teacher is, really high vibrational, and who has a very higher perspective, who himself meditates and himself continues to learn further about the universal energies and laws and the requirements, and try. So basically these teachers are the catalyst between the higher dimensions of the higher universal energies and the earthly wisdom. So they kind of bring in what is required the most onto the earth, and try to grow that through his or her students, so that it reaches to masses through their action, through their purpose, through their work. So well, this was the role of a teacher in that time. And um, the education is supposed to be very holistic in that time. Now, holistic in which way? So let me give you, uh, let us divide it into three aspects. One is um, the higher uh, purpose, or higher, just a second, I've made notes. Let me get you the exact word for it. Hmm. Okay, so the curriculum is holistic but not a fixed curriculum. So there is more of an individual attention given to each of the student in the school. Uh, the teacher would attend to the individual requirement, individual growth requirement of um, uh, that student. Uh, the entire education is consisting of skill building, which includes life skills, which includes how to handle self, means self-care skills, how to handle the world and societal skills, to that we call it a social skills. And when there were princes who would rule the kingdom, then the entire education on being a great leader in terms of being in the war, to um, being a great leader, setting up systems in own, but also making sure that that this prince is nurtured in a way so that his individual best comes out through um, experiential activities, through um, live and interactive conversations, through putting him into a certain role and practices, through his action, making him aware of who he is and making him explore who he is, so that he comes and shares that with the teacher, and the teacher uh, you know helps the child to move to the next level. So there is less of a grading system, like the first year and the second year you study this much, and the second year you study this much. It is more like when the child or the student overcomes a certain um, um, overcomes a certain, or rather has imbibed a certain learning, then it is time for that student to move to the next. So there are no standards despite the age group difference and the caste or the role difference in the society. So well, that was something I'm finding very very amusing, as much as I see that uh, I feel that I've known this ways and methods very closely, and somewhere I have been using uh, these this ways in my mentoring as well. Um, the students were not prepared for just passing the exams. Students were prepared for life and for their individual path, which I find really beautiful. And so, you know, there was hardly a question of student feeling inconfident. Everyone was confident in that period. Can you imagine? Like anybody, nobody would feel inferior to the another. Everybody knew where I stand and what I do, and um, uh, how I can just make myself better. There is um, never a feeling of, even if the person is quiet and less extrovert, even then the feeling feeling inferior to another was out of question in that time. So that is beautiful. And so there was obviously no reason to get into depression or anxiety or stress. So while all of this is something that is a built up of our time, we have created it. That time was free from these limitations, and wow, I would like to ask for a world that has, where we can really, really give this level of inner courage and inner strength to each child. And what can this children do if they don't have to go through at all feeling inferior to anybody. So well, I'm waiting for such a world. Now the education was focused on the physical strength and health, emotional strengthening, which included making students um, build their physical strength, building muscle. So they didn't have to, like how we have physical education, physical training in our schools, but this is more on a on a like more extended level, and it just did not include only certain exercise and all. It included a lot of things, um, which also included how to do mountain climbing and jumping rivers and swimming and all of that, because in that period obviously there were no planes, and not everybody living among nature. So sometimes you have to cross the river, you have to jump the mountain. As princes you have to know all of this, because sometimes you really have to move, like travel to other distance places for war, and travel through the forest. So the student in that time were prepared in a way so that they can, they have explored every aspect of life, and at all they have to face a little bit of difficulty or little bit of discomfort. They are not hesitating to face the challenge, to face that difficulty. So well, that is something really really beautiful. So well, all of that on the physical level, the education was done on the level of how to um, um, recognize the herbs in the forest, and which herb kind of plays role in the body, how it adds nutrients. Because if you have to travel through the forest, and at all you are stung by something, what you should immediately do. So first aid education through herbs, because that is the time where Ayurveda and natural remedies were the medicines, and they literally did have a very strong, powerful medicinal compounds in it, and they healed really fast, and body also knew how to heal by itself. So obviously there was no antibiotics and injections and all of that. So students were prepared for that, and how to handle themselves medically also. um, Students were taught how to let go and cleanse and meditate, keep and um, uh, channel own strength on the daily basis. So that was also part of what uh, this education system taught. So Ram, Bharat, Lakshman, Shatrughna, basically they went through very holistic practice where for a certain years they were learning about all of this, learning about the basics of life, how the palaces are built, how the civilization, how the cities are built. As princes, they had to know all of this, what kind of facilities are required, um, how to build their own huts, how to cut wood, how to cook basic meal also. So they were prepared on everything, and it wasn't like, if you're a king you wouldn't learn this, because anytime king may require to do it. And we will know how, because of this training, how actually this training helps Ram to survive in the years of his exile. So well, no training is wasted ever. So they learn all of this. And Ram, Lakshman, Bharat, and Shatrugna, well, they are really, really fast learners. Now, this another thing that I want to really add in this period, and I'm giving all of this that is coming in the moment while I'm looking at them in this very moment, studying in the Gurukul. And I would like to add that they were sent to study in Rishi Vashishta's hermitage in his Gurukul. And he was also King Dashrath's great advisor. He was the reason why these four princes were born. It was his advice to call upon the entire ritual of yagya, and invite these beautiful beings to come upon the earth. And the thing that I wanted to actually add here was um, um, yeah. So they were educated to build their own huts. They were um, educated to recognize different species, their strengths, um, their qualities, their weaknesses, because somewhere as a king you got to keep coming and meeting different species were coexisted, like the monkey species and the reptilian species and all of these people. And sometimes you have to create kinships with them. Sometimes you have to know who can who has what characters and who can be what. Recognizing demons, their ways, knowing your enemy, like demons were the enemies of that time. So knowing, recognizing the enemies, knowing their tricks, demons could change forms. They were they could turn themselves into animal, into, they had these kind of superpowers too. And to actually recognize you know who is who, and how, how to really, and then coming to learning different weapons, starting from a very small practice of shooting arrow to sword fight, to spear fight, to the mace fight, to actually calling upon the divine weapons and their uses. Because as I said, this time is filled with infinite possibilities of, the help can come from the higher realms also. And each known divine weapon had its own power, and they were meant to use in a certain scenarios. uh, and how to call them, how to send it back, because this is coming from higher realm, so you have to after the use you can't keep it with you. So all of that, as a ruler they were supposed to learn about administrations required in that time, running the court, communication as a king, uh, decision making, bringing how to bring justice into the conflicts between people, how to recognize who is really your supporter, and who could be who could be who's the one who could become a culprit, or who could become who could actually manipulate the entire system, or can deceit the system in the kingdom. So do that, planning taxes, how to actually recognize the suggestions of people and what they seek, and when it is time for the change in the system, um, how to really bring in front of them different changes, and help them prosper, different offers, different systems, different plans that adds to people's life, to their businesses, to their lifestyle. So all of this like was included in the 7 to 25 years of their education. um, the kings were also taught, like to be kings were also taught how to build a loving harmonious connection with, because this is a time where there is no internet, this is a time where um, uh, there is no telephonic conversations or WhatsApp conversations, and your kingdom is widespread. So you sitting in Ayodhya, how you're going to actually reach out to a distant city of yours, and how you're going to run it, and how you're going to create a connection to a blacksmith sitting in that city, that, like, because king is like for everyone, and how sitting in the center of the of the country, how they're going to handle everything, including the betterment and happiness of people. So they were taught this means being a leader, being a king was of a job of a great responsibility. They were also taught about the warfare rules. They were also taught about how to plan the war strategies, how to train soldiers, and create systems to also maintain what kind of weapons are required. So all of this was educational, and that was all part of the system. And these four princes with their different skills, they started learning really quick from their teacher, Rishi Vashishta. And uh, there is also a part where when the entire training is over, these the city, like all the people and the kings and everyone is called, and uh, they kind of they create more, not more like an examination, but like a presentation of how they have grown, how they have evolved. So well, that also takes place for all the four princes, where they really appreciate their and welcome their king to be. And when Ram reaches the age 25, and when their education is over, they are all they all return back to the palace, where they're so warmly welcomed. And as he was to be announced a crown prince, uh, they begin to um, you know get involved in the matters of the kingdom. So they were given small responsibilities to see how they're actually utilizing the knowledge that they have gained, and actually get a hands-on experience before they actually take up the entire responsibility to, run the kingdom. They are given these tasks, so they sit in the court on the daily basis. They see how the father is handling things. Sometimes there are moments and days where, Dashrath asks uh, suggestions from his children, and ask how they would resolve this issue if they were the one making the decision. And the way, Ram um, handled situations, the way he brought solutions to the conflict, the way he connected to people, he already had started becoming the most lovable, handsome, desirable prince. And people were really looking forward to have him as a king. Like, they had already considered him as the king uh, of Ayodhya. So, well, his qualities were already shining. Now, one thing that I want to add here, and that is how strange it is for somebody who's already a light, who already has already got a lot of knowledge, going to school and uh, studying all of this. That is something that I find uh, pretty amusing. And he goes through all of that, the entire 7 to 25 years of his education, going through all of, like, sometimes in the present time, if we have to just redo a certain thing that we already know, like redo a certain subject that we already know, and we feel, oh, we're getting bored, oh, I've already know this, I don't need to do this again. But he would do this from this understanding that he had he knows things, but he still has to recognize this era's people, how they are different, how what is it that they require, and what this timeline has to offer to him. So each timeline is different, and that's why, if you look at all the historic great figures, even though they are really fast learners, and they are the ones who are the torch bearers, they are the light, uh, and the leader for many generations to come, they go through a great period of learning, for they have a bigger purpose, and they have a bigger responsibility to show people a direction. So, to be able to do that, the first thing they have to do is actually learn and understand and recognize the requirements of the present time. So, and Ram, uh, as we're moving forward, we will recognize and see how his role unfolds. And for that, he had to really, really, go through rigorous training in his educational years, despite he being the one who knew a lot of the skills already. So with that, I'm kind of winding up today's episode, and on Thursday we will meet again with episode 3 on actual turnabouts of the event, and how the journey of these 4 princes actually began. So you guys take care. I hope you enjoy the information, and re-enlivening this era. And I hope that this kind of connects you to some part of that time and space where you lived somewhere in any of your lifetime. And what if we can actually bring back that kind of an education system for our children, where they are not prepared for exam, or they don't have to feel inferior to anyone, but they're born with and they're growing with such clarity and such inner strength and courage, and the sense of their own purpose, to actually be in this life without hesitation, without even that single thought that, you know, this world um, is not worth living for a single time, for a single day. Even failure is not a failure for them. So, well, I'm hoping for such a time to arrive on the earth, on this planet, for all of us, for the coming generation. And with that, I see you on Thursday, next Friday. Check this episode tomorrow, also on my YouTube channel Alchemy of Being. Take care and bye bye.